Hello everyone, welcome back to the video on the channel, and in today's video I have another tier list for y'all. So today's tier list we are going to go over the recent PvP hotfix or patch and whatnot and kind of discuss how the meta has changed. Now in the recent PvP hotfix, all they really did was nerf the balance school and they didn't really touch any other school in the game. Now, balance was obviously targeted because you had like sergeants, players getting like warlord without their skill actually increasing. It was just a form of boosting with how overpowered that school was. I don't think I've seen anything like that in Wiz ever since the draining meta last year, which was also pretty wild. But point is, the school was holding the game hostage for 3 quarters of the year 2025, 9 months, right? So it really needed a nerf, but yeah, it did get nerfed pretty hard here with Chameleon and Scion. Now, it is important to note that Chameleon is technically bugged right now. It's a whole new spell, but it's still the old spell, right? So if you guys do see anybody in the arena like exploiting it, because that's technically what it is, it's an exploit, right? Um, you can report them, right? Again, if they don't know about it, I wouldn't report them. But if you see the same guy, doing it day after day, that's a pretty valid report. For example, on my stream, I think the second day of the update, I came across like a relatively high ranked person doing that. And I was like, you shouldn't be doing that, right? And I told them if I catch them doing it again, I will report them because that's literally an exploit. The card is not supposed to function that way, and you're abusing it to rank up. That's what an exploit is. So the number one best school right now in the game, ever since the balance nerf, is going to have to be Death. Now, Death was already number 2 when balance was number 1, and Death was always a solid pick, right? It's just no school can compete with balance the last 9 months because that school has beat everyone for free by existing, right? But now that balance has got nerfed, Death is in the number 1 spot. On a Death right now, you just have so much control over the game. It's kind of like this with like Death and Ice, I've noticed. They just counter literally everything in the game and they're so well rounded. Kind of similar to how balance was like just before the nerf. On a Death, you are a resist school, which means you get stabilized, and that means you have 100 resist. And that means you counter 2 buffs with 1 debuff, aka Brace, with that amount of resist in the game right now. You also get the best fusion in the game, which is Pyre Dragon. On top of that, Death Fire just covers so much, and the one weakness you actually do have is supposed to be dots. But that's okay because Twaret is like 90% accuracy and 2k healing, dot removal for 6 pips. Incredibly good when you combine that with like an Infernal Oni or Rain of Fire, which Deaths tend to do. That's why they run Fire Mastery to cosplay as Fire in their bad matchups. And then on top of that, if anyone tries to aura back and get 100 resist, you can simply just click Monster Mash, which is a hit and stun practically. And if they try to aura you to counter your brace or stabilize, you can simply just click Poison. Poison is so broken right now that a Poison can simply trade with a Storm Oni. We saw that live on my stream a couple of weeks ago. This guy just sent a Poison into a hit, and it was better than my base Storm Oni, which is absolutely insane. But yeah, Death doesn't really have a bad matchup right now, aside from Ice, I would say, and that's just because Ice is kind of similar to Death, but Ice counters Death, right? Where they all kind of counter everything, but by nature, Ice counters Death in Rochambeau, right? So that's your one bad matchup, especially with Winter Moon in the game, right? And yeah, I mean, you beat Myth on a Death pretty easy if you're a good player. Obviously, Death Mirrors or whatever. You beat Balance now. All you have to do is Shield Gambit, Ghoul, Shrike, and that's pretty much it. And if they try to aura you to counter your 100 resist, on the stabilize, you just click poison, and then the balance falls over and dies. So also life gets countered pretty heavily by death. The only time you lose to a life on a death, assuming you play optimally, is like if they're just jading and they're packing so many heal copies that your counters won't keep up because, jading is still a thing. But generally on a death, you're going to beat life, you're going to beat myth, you're going to beat balance, you're going to beat fire, you're going to beat storm. Ice is your only bad matchup, really, and there's not really a whole lot of ices in queue. And it's not like you don't have a a good chance against ice, right? It's just I wouldn't say you're favored. You know, it's not a brainless matchup like the other ones kind of are at the moment. Okay, next up, I am going to put life. Now, I actually put life kind of lower on my tier list before, and to an extent, I will say life is actually not that good right now. But you do need to kind of consider the reality, especially at higher ranks, that people will just jade to win, right? So basically, anytime, no matter the matchup, right, if you get a Storm or Death, you can just heal and run them out of cards and win the game that way, which is incredibly dumb, right? That's why the heal cap is coming this fall. You know, hopefully they listen to the community feedback and actually implement the heal cap properly, because the original idea they had for the heal cap isn't going to fix shading at all. So it's just a nothing burger update. So, you know, fingers crossed they actually listen to the community and properly put a heal cap in the game. But yeah, on a life, I mean, you still have a hard time against balance because swaps are OP at the moment. But it's just the fact that, like, you're not even bad against Storm, right? If you're equally skilled players, Storm versus life is a 50-50 matchup, simply because all the life has to do is shield a crap ton and then just cosplay as a death when the Storm tries to play the game with like an aura, catch blades, or what else, like a heal, use pirate, pretty easy. Oddly enough, I'd say one of life's tougher matchups is actually fire, simply because, you know, the meta for fire is Firestorm right now, and Firestorm is just such a good combo, especially with the what's it called, the lightning dragon fusion. It's just incredibly good. So yeah, like, you struggle against balance because the swaps are OP, but like against a death and a storm, you can compete if you're a good player pretty well. Myth is pretty free if you pack the right cards. Fire can be a little challenging. Ice is free if you pack the right cards. So pretty much the only bad matchup you have is balance, because swaps are overpowered right now. And anytime you're upset about the state of the game, you can always just fall back on just healing forever, running the opponent out of cards, and winning that way. And another stupid thing high rank people do to rank up right now is they will literally just like make the opponent timer by healing so much, and they will not actually lose any rank, right? So let's say we're playing each other, I Jade and you timer me, I don't lose any rank, but you do, right? So I'll just go on to the next game, right? And I'll probably win that game, right? Or whatever. And it'll just keep going on. I will always gain rank, but I will never lose rank. I'll either be gaining rank or staying the same rank. And most of the time, players are going to leave when someone jades because it's not respectful for their time or fun, right? So life is just kind of has it that way right now. Once they fix jading on life, though, I would not put it anywhere near the top, though. I'd probably put it probably like number 4, number 5 on this tier list. It's just the fact that you can jade and reset the game and not even be that bad against your counter matchups. Is why life is so high on the tier list. Okay, this might be a hot take, but I think I'm going to put balance at number 3. So I just talked about swaps being overpowered and whatnot. I think balance right now, I think balance wizards are kind of going to be in a struggling state for a little bit here, right? Obviously, you're still a good school. Like a myth, for example, you can set so hard that you don't really lose to a myth on a balance if you play properly. But with Chameleon and Scion gone, Fire and Storm are actually a lot better against balance right now. Even Death is a lot better against balance right now too, right? But the fact of the matter is, because swaps are so overvalued at the moment, whether it's like, you know, Scarab, Gearhead, or, you know, Echoes with Chimera. So I would still say balance is a good school, and depending on the matchup you get, it's still extremely brain dead. Like, for example, if I get a myth on my balance, the only thing I have to do is like impair, you know, blade dilution, raw, crow if I fall behind, and just spam them until they die. Literally, that's all you have to do. Okay, next up, our 2 slots are going to be between fire and ice. Now, I honestly think these schools are both equal with how powerful they are in the meta. Ice is, you know, it's kind of like the death effect where it counters everything. It's like so good, right? And it's so tanky with 110 resist actually, as opposed to death's 100 res, right? So ice is really good, but I think fire is just a little better, because fire is just a little more potent than ice in a way. You know what I mean? Like ice gets more passive value than fire, but if you're a good fire and you know how to play to the meta, I think you can do a little bit better. For the past 2 seasons, my fire has just been playing like absolutely brain dead, and I don't think he's lost like more than 20 games in like 6 months, this guy. But he's doing extremely well. Basically, all I do is just buff stack into a dot and just repeat that until they eventually deck fill, and I just bowler Scion and they win. The only matchup you have on a fire that is bad is Storm, because that's one of the two worst matchups in the game, is Fire versus Storm and Storm versus Death, right? So unfortunately, Fire does have one of the worst matchups in the whole entire game at the moment. But aside from that, everybody else you have a pretty easy game plan on, right? Now, Death is way better against Fire in this patch as well. This is kind of how the meta has, played out, especially Fire Mastery on Death and whatnot. But like you're really good against Life as well if you just pack the right cards and play properly with like, Aura, taking buffed heffies with the Aura, keeping your pips to counter them, catch of the day, stuff like that. Fire is a really good school, and it's really confusing to me because a lot of people would be like, oh, Fire is bad, and they just don't understand how to play to their strengths on the Fire, right? And I see a lot of people packing like Brimstone, Fuel, the Trapamu, which, by the way, they are great. I just stopped packing that personally because the only matchup I felt like I ever needed that in was Storm, and that's already an unwinnable matchup anyways. Like, the only way a Fire beats a Storm is if the Storm is bad or the Storm deck fiddles, right? So, regardless if you're packing traps or not, the outcome doesn't really change. It's still on the Storm to make the mistakes for you to win, right? So, I personally think Fire shouldn't be doing that, and they should just be doubling down on something else to improve their other matchup win conditions, you know what I mean? Which is what I've been doing for the past like 2 or 3 seasons, right? So my Fire's been doing very well. I think Fire's a good school. I definitely wouldn't put it in like the top two. I mean, maybe you could put it at number 3, but I feel like the Death is just so good. It's a whole tier above Fire in my opinion. I don't know. I mean, I kind of like where Fire's at right now. Like some people don't know how to play it. Some people are just like brain dead, go to the school. I think it's kind of okay where it's at. Definitely think they should look at Fire Scion and Bull if they do want to nerf dots in the future, and not the actual dots themselves, because these two cards are what makes Fire extremely oppressive at the moment. Alright, next up we have Ice, like I said. Now, I think you could tie Ice and Fire, or they're kind of like interchangeable in my opinion. Ice, like Death, it's just like you cover so much ground with this school. Like, you just like, you kind of just counter everything, I would say, right? Now, generally in this meta, Ice is the weakest against healing. You're good against like everything else at the moment. I mean, not really dots. You're okay against dots, but generally you can kind of bank on your weaknesses and your tank ability with 110 resist. I personally like where Ice is right now. I think it's honestly on the better side than it is on like the bad side. Like 5 being in the middle, 10 being great, 1 being bad. I'd put probably Ice more on like a 6 out of 10, maybe a 7 out of 10 than I would like a 5 or a 4. You just cover a lot of ground right now, and your matchups aren't even that bad. Like, you're not bad against Myth. It's annoying, but you're not bad against them, right? Obviously, Life, it's supposed to be an even matchup, and honestly, it would be a fun matchup if Life just couldn't heal for, 30k or whatever, right? So, I think once the heal cap properly gets implemented in the game, Ice vs Life actually could be a fun matchup, in my opinion. You're also really good against balance now, especially with these new nerfs coming into the game. Fire is a pretty tricky one, right? But if the Fire doesn't know how to play properly or they deck fail, absolutely winnable. You also have the ability to cosplay similar to Death in a way, like, against Myth or a Death or an Ice Mirror as well. You have that option because your dual schooling is decent on an Ice. And against Storm, you're also very good against Storm because you just out damage per pip them currently with the current stat model and spells in the game for an Ice Wizard. So yeah, your matchups are generally pretty good. I would say your only 2 bad matchups are like Fire, if it's a good player, and Life because they can heal forever. But like everybody else, like you're kind of okay against them. Okay, now we're on the last 2 schools. So I think, I mean, I think the entire community agrees here, but obviously Storm and Myth are the two worst schools. Now, they're really interchangeable, depending on which one is the worst school. Now, I've learned something recently, and that's in the Storm and Myth matchup. But if the Myth packs Starshield, the Myth is and running Fire Duel School, I should say. If the Myth is running Fire Duel School, which most of them do, and they pack Starshields, I would say this is actually a Myth favored matchup. Okay, but if they're not running Starshield or Fire Duel, easily Storm. Okay, but that is something interesting. I think more people are going to catch on to is running more Star Shields and winning the Storm matchup, right? So it's kind of tough for me to rank these ones because I feel like if Myth consistently would beat Storm, I would maybe put it higher than Storm on this tier list. But it's just kind of hard to say because I would say most people don't run Star Shield, so Storm's better than Myth. Also, healing is good. Storm's decent against healing, and dots as well. You're like immune to dots. So, I mean, I don't really know. I think these ones are interchangeable. I think I'm just gonna put them like in the same tier because it's kind of hard to say which one is better than the other. You know what I mean? I'd say Storm has more options than Myth. It's certainly more fun to play than Myth. Because Myth, no matter who you play against, it's just the same thing. Linear, boring, pretty easy to counter you, right? But if you play around the counters, you can get a decent chunk of value. Even your counter matchups on a Myth, like I feel like your only bad matchup is life, honestly. Like I haven't lost to a fire on my Myth in the past 2 seasons. Ever since Mars came out, really, it's just like if they don't get a steel pip into an emote off like round 2 or 3, the Myth will have the pips to actually counter the triple OT and then just run away with the pressure of the game, right? So I don't know. I think Myth is like it's not a good school. I don't want people to think I'm saying Myth is a good school. Um, you have no options compared to everyone else on this tier list. But I'm saying it is absolutely winnable to win most of the matchups in the game. I just wouldn't say you're favored and it's boring and it's linear. But like really, in my opinion, your only terrible matchup is life. Like, really. If you ran Storm Duel, I mean, you can do actually pretty well against life, but then you don't have the Fire Duel to like, beat the Storm matchup, like I said, right? So it's kind of always like depending on your dual school, you're toggling off winning a matchup and not. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. That's kind of why it's hard for me to rank Storm above Myth or Myth above Storm. So I think instead I'm just going to tie them in the same tier at the moment. I guess I could talk about Storm briefly at the end here as well. So Storm right now is just bad. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Um, I mean, I don't even know where to start really. First of all, shields don't work on a Storm. Secondly, shields are overvalued, which indirectly hurts Storm. Thirdly, the game is built around Dual School, but Storm Dual School is disabled at the moment. Number 4, it's also very easy to counter a Storm. No school should be complaining about Storm right now unless you are on a fire, because that's the only school that cannot deal with Storm and like counter it really. But everyone else has very simple answers, whether it's like Impair, Skeletal Dragon, Scarecrow, Ice Wyvern, whatever. Very simple answers. It's kind of like Myth in a way, I feel like, now that I say it out loud. Storm is incredibly easy to counter, unless you're a fire, make it extremely clear, right? Very easy to counter, and that's kind of why, again, it makes sense to tie them for like the worst school, right? They both very linear, very easy to counter, right? The thing with Myth, like I said, you can win your counter matchups, but on Storm, like Death v Storm, worst matchup in the whole game. Up there versus Fire, up there with Fire v Storm, right? Uh, Ice v Storm, right? Ice wins that most of the time if they're competent, right? So, and there's not really any answers. Like, there's no skill you can develop to get better at those matchups. You just have to hope your opponent is bad or you get lucky, which is bad, right? Like, again, on my Myth, for example, against a Fire, I can outplay that Fire and beat that counter matchup on my Myth, right? You don't have that option on a Storm. You're limited by the game and its current design, so you can't actually, like, get the skill to win those matchups at the moment, right? So I hope that made sense, y'all. I think this is a pretty good tier list. I mean, it's kind of interesting going through things again here. Again, with the Chameleon and Scion nerfs. What do you guys think, though? Leave your thoughts and feedback in the comments below. I look forward to reading them. Thank you for watching. Take care, and goodbye.